Sie befinden sich im Gefahrenbereich der Abbruchkante.
Ende Gelände, der Podcast.
Welcome to our listeners from around the world. The Ende Gelände podcast is broadcasting. Climate justice and the end of fossil capitalism is our cause. I'm Jonas.
And I'm Laura, and we are from the International Working Group of Ende Gelände. This podcast will be in English because the language of our working group is English. And we also have some fantastic guests that do not speak German. First, we want to give you a look behind the scenes of the International Working Group, and then we will speak with two comrades in the UK and Italy.
So, Laura, international work, what does that mean?
So, already in the first coal train blockade in the Rhineland, in the year 2010, there were internationals. Some comrades from the Netherlands hopped over the border and joined us. So with the years, the climate camp in the Rhineland became a meeting point of the European climate justice movement, and thus, in 2015, when Ende Gelände started its very first action from the camp there, we were already a lot of internationals from all over Europe. So the idea of the International Working Group is now to coordinate the international relations of Ende Gelände. Mostly we do mobilize not ourselves, but support groups around Europe that want to come to Ende Gelände. We answer their questions, try to motivate them to bring all their friends. We look that all important information is available in English, French, and some other languages. And of course, we try to bring an international perspective into the Ende Gelände process. We also have organized the interpretation of the Ende Gelände action plenaries the last 2 times. And yeah, that's all what we do. In the first years, the working group was very small, but now we are a team of around 10 people, and a lot of them is not from Germany. So we have people from France and Belgium and UK and some other countries. And this is also the reason why we work in English. And because we are so many now, we started last year to mobilize to other actions outside from Germany.
That's right, and there is a whole lot of wonderful climate actions all over Europe and the world right now. And our movement is spreading and radicalizing everywhere very quickly. Other groups are adapting the strategies of Ende Gelände in their own context. And we try to support them. One way of doing it is that each year as Ende Gelände we highlight 2 actions under the framing of Ende Gelände Goes Europe. This year's focus is on Power Beyond Border in July in the United Kingdom near London, and the first Italian climate camp in September near Venice. The idea is to give back all the wonderful solidarity we got over the years from international activists coming all the way to Ende Gelände. So we do Skillshare, trying to pass on some of our knowledge and experience and support those struggles as much as we can. But we are also mobilizing actively for people from Germany to travel to these actions. Last year we mainly supported Limitis Meme in the Czech Republic, who are also fighting against lignite, and our comrades from Code Rod in the Netherlands, who did a mass action of civil disobedience against Europe's biggest gas field.
Now our comrade David has spoken with Bert from Power Beyond Borders about the history of climate struggles there and why they are linking now climate struggles with the question of migration and racism.
Hello, my name is Bird and I'm a British climate justice activist with Reclaim the Power, and I've most recently been working with Ende Gelände on Ende Gelände Goes Europe, because Ende Gelände is supporting our Power Beyond Borders camp from the 26th to the 31st of July in the southeast of the UK.
Hello, my name is David, and I'm in the international working group of Ende Gelände and have been involved in Ende Gelände Goes Europe. And we're conducting an interview today with Bert about the history of the climate camps in the UK and how that featured in the development of Reclaim the Power. So maybe, Bert, you could tell us something about the history of the climate camps in the UK first.
Yeah, sure. So I am too young to have gone to any of the climate camps myself. It was before I became active, before my time, but they were between 2006 to 2010 in the UK. They were the largest mobilisation of people taking direct action for climate justice back then. And they were targeting a number of different sites across the years. They targeted big coal-fired power stations, targeted Heathrow Airport, targeted bankers in the City of London one year. And they were a really big mobilisation. And I guess if you want to take it further back, you can see that there's a really clear lineage from the alter or anti-globalisation movement into the British climate camps of 2006 to 2010. It was kind of in relation to what a lot of the activists were frustrated about with the summit hopping, as they called it, of just kind of going from one big summit of, the G20 or the G8 or whoever it was, the big financial, the big capitalist countries of the world, to do a big anti-capitalist demonstration or direct action, and not kind of targeting more infrastructure or targeting key points of where those things move around, and that climate camp arose out of the anti-globalization movement. And it kind of drew to a close in 2010. And lots of the activists that were involved with the climate camps decided to stop their activism, reduce their activism. A lot were very burnt out. They'd been involved with lots of the mobilizations around Copenhagen in 2009, so were quite burnt out. But also that was when the austerity plans in the UK started to really kick off as a result of financial crisis of 2008. So lots of those activists who were active in the climate camps in the UK then decided to focus mainly on anti-austerity campaigning. Lots founded UK Uncut in the UK. So really tried to make the argument with using direct action in the UK that we have been told that we have to make all of these savings to fix our deficit in the public purse. Meanwhile, there are super rich capitalists that are evading tax on a massive scale, funneling their money into Monaco, etc., etc., and that these big companies seem to be able to exist without paying any tax, and that actually if we took capitalist individuals and capitalist enterprises' duty to pay tax seriously, then they would more than cover the deficit and in fact be able to pay for a lot more social welfare in the UK. We wouldn't have to have tuition fees, etc., etc. But anyway, moving on from that, it's accounted for by a number of the people that set up the Klima camps, that a number of German activists went over to some of these climate camps in the UK, got really inspired by doing a mass camp on the basis of fighting against climate change. I want to say it was for climate justice, but it was before really the words climate justice really emerged, So more about mitigating climate change back then. These German activists got inspired, they went back to Germany, and they also were able to use the more long-ranging environmental movements, history of the anti-nuclear movement, all of the things that had been learned in the anti-nuclear movement of setting up a large camp or doing a mass mobilisation. Yeah, you kind of had a combination of the influence of the climate camps in the UK, but also the legacy of the anti-nuclear movement in Germany. So that the first Klima camp happened in 2009 and went on for a number of years, was different sites, a lot in the Rhineland, as is the case with Ende Gelände now, but also elsewhere, targeting key points of fossil fuel infrastructure. Yeah, and then Ende Gelände arose as a big coalition of lots of groups that kind of seen the Klima camp model and thought, hey, this is good, let's try and make it bigger and better. So you have then the Ende Gelände coalition emerged to then have the first Ende Gelände in 2015 in the Rhineland. So there's like a really clear lineage for the climate camps in the UK, into the Klima camps in Germany, and then into Ende Gelände. And also, I guess if you continue to follow that lineage and the influence that Ende Gelände more specifically has had, you get to the point where we've got our first ever Italian climate justice camp in September. We've had first other climate justice camps in different countries have organised. And Ende Gelände, for me as well as a British climate justice activist, is really clear that there's a real bringing together of people from different countries, but Ende Gelände is the one thing that we all do and we get involved in, and we can really learn and communicate across national boundaries and kind of say, what works for you, what doesn't work for you, how do you do this? Like the hope and the optimism that Ende Gelände inspires, I think is really infectious. And it's amazing to see the influence that it's had. So it's exciting, but kind of taking a number of steps backwards, Climate Camp in the UK also then influenced its successor, Reclaim the Power, which is the organisation that I've been part of since 2013. So Reclaim the Power is really considered to be the next generation of the climate camps in the UK. They are not at all exactly the same people. Very much it's a clear generational shift. Quite a few of the problems and the issues that arose in the climate camps in the UK, which there were many, have been responded to in Reclaim the Power in a kind of quite conscious evolutionary process. Not all of them, but like a lot of them have, which is exciting. So Reclaim the Power was set up off the back of a direct action that a number of the people who had met at the climate camps, they had done an action against West Burton Power Station, which is a gas-fired power station, and they called it No Dash for Gas. And it was really to counter the British government and industries push towards gas. And we see this now, and especially with fracking, there's a real push towards gas as a real kind of alternative to coal. But of course, we all know that it's still a fossil fuel. It's still polluting. And when you take into account methane leaks and things like that, it's a lot more polluting than the figures might suggest. And then also when you take into account that a lot of the gas that they burn and want to burn even more of is fracked gas in the US. Or Russian gas as well. And so when you consider the ecological impact of fracked gas in the US being transported across the world and then burnt in the UK, it's pretty disastrous. So Reclaim the Power has mainly was set up from these people that did this action against a gas-fired power station. And of the following year, in 2013, there was going to be a Reclaim the Power, this new social movement organisation. We're going to do a big action against the same gas-fired power station. But this also coincided with the time that fracking suddenly erupted. And so that became the frontline climate justice struggle in the UK was against fracking. And it became clear that the government were really going to push fracking. So there was a quick 180 turnaround, and the people that had organised this camp, Reclaim the Power, then decided to do it in Balcombe in the southeast of the UK, not very far away from Brighton, where that was due to be the first fracking site. So pretty much since 2013, Reclaim the Power has mainly focused against fracking, to great success. And it's really important that we follow the lead of frontline community struggles against fracking. So we've done a lot of work with the people at Preston New Road, the nanas at Preston New Road, lots of the locals there, and other community resistances against fracking. So yeah, pretty much all of our camps have been against fracking, with the exception of a camp against coal in Wales in 2016. And that was a mass action. About 200 people went and shut down this coal mine in Wales. And that was definitely influenced by Ende Gelände and by people going on Ende Gelände the previous year and going, okay,
we can do this.
We can do this. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we can get the numbers, and we can get the numbers enough to do this. And I think that definitely in the UK, there's been quite a sense of, amongst like the hardcore of ecological anarchists, to be like, oh, what's the point in mobilising hundreds or thousands of people to shut down a fracking site when we can do it with 5 really hardcore people that are prepared to take extreme legal consequences for their action, which is great if you want to do that. And there have been lots of amazing people that have done that. But we've mainly done small affinity group actions that are quite hardcore, but are well coordinated, targeted at different targets. And then the mass kind of protest has been more of a mass demonstration. So not necessarily a mass action that you would expect with Ende Gelände, but a mass protest. So the Wales camp in 2016 was great, to the point that there's been a ruling in the Welsh government that no new coal mines are allowed to start in Wales, and no coal mines can expand. So that coal mine that we occupied, they wanted to expand it, and now they're not going to anymore. So it was a really good success. It's a shame that that's not happening in the rest of the UK, because there's been some new coal mines that have opened up in the northeast. We're really excited about doing a mass direct action. And this kind of, our decision to go towards more of a mass direct action type of protest also has coincided with quite a pivotal trial in terms of the policing of protesting in the UK and the criminalisation of dissent in the UK, and that is the Stansted 15 trial. Also echoes the sentiment in the UK of heightening, frustration at heightening tensions around border control, repression of migrants, and detaining migrants in detention centres, torturing them to an extent, and deporting them en masse back to countries where they face imprisonment, torture, or death often.
And that's where the movement in the UK makes the clear link between climate change struggles and migration.
Yeah, exactly. What's really interesting about the Stansted 15 case is that it was a group of people that they put themselves together to stop a deportation flight from taking off and taking people back to Nigeria and Ghana, where they faced likely imprisonment, torture, or death. And they successfully stopped this flight from taking off. But it was formed by people that had, gained experience of doing airport actions as a result of being involved in the environmental movement, and then joining together with lesbians and gay support the migrants, and joining together with more migrant justice activists to really do an action that symbolised fighting against the hostile environment, but also recognising the environmental and ecological costs of aviation. And so we've made a decision within Reclaim the Power that we're going to do our camp Power Beyond Borders this year in July, against gas, but also in solidarity with migrants. And for us, it's really important that we take this step, because we see the rise of the far right, and they often have a level of climate denialism, but kind of recognise that the symptom of climate change is as a result of the problem, curse of fossil fuel capitalism, and that when we look to the root cause, it's our system of fossil fuel capitalism that doesn't recognise ecological limits to growth, that is happy to destroy the next generation's future and make the lives of lots of people in the global south misery as a result of just not paying heed to ecological limits. And by the same token, migration is often as a result of fleeing war or, ecological destruction or damage or collapse in people's countries, or just like terrible economic conditions that make people very rightly come and seek a better life in the Western world. Yeah. And that we have to recognize that this is as a result of the legacy and history of colonial capitalism and racist capitalism. And so when we look at the causes of both climate change and the migration crisis, and then kind of the rise of the far right in terms of suppressing migration or demonizing the migrant, then we have to recognize that we're fighting the same struggle, and that especially with regards to climate change, when we see the injustice of climate change, in order to fight for climate justice, when we see the injustice, we have to recognize that, yes, our children are going to be affected, but us in the Western world, we're generally okay with regards to climate change at the moment. But it's those in the global south that are already dying and suffering immensely as a result of climate change. When countries are trying to react or adapt against in result of climate change, obviously it's going to be the countries that are the most impoverished that are going to be able to deal with it, the least well. Yeah. So and the countries of the global south are not poor just because of an unhappy coincidence, but they've been systematically impoverished exploited over hundreds of years of colonial capitalism. So this camp is all about trying to bring those two struggles together, recognize it's part of the same struggle, and say that if we're fighting for climate justice, then we have to fight for migrant justice, and that they are one and the same, and that we have to make a concerted effort to, pay attention to our white privilege as predominantly white activists in the environmental movement, and say, own up wholeheartedly for the historic responsibilities of the environmental movement in the UK and elsewhere in terms of often not paying heed to the plight of black and minority ethnic people, global majority people, and saying that we have to fight in a way that is in solidarity with those worst affected, in solidarity with people seeking a better life, in solidarity, across everyone that is at the sharp end of fossil fuel capitalism and colonial capitalism. So
this sounds great.
Yeah, come to our camp. It's going to be banging. It's going to be great.
And you're welcoming everyone from across Europe and everywhere.
We welcome everyone across Europe. If you can get there, then you should definitely get there. Be part of this exciting movement in the UK.
That sounds so great. Thank you so much for the interview.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, nice one.
That was really interesting. I haven't known that the people in the UK started the climate camps because they were tired of the summit hopping, because this was the exact reason why people in the Rhineland started the climate camps after the COP summit in Copenhagen in the year 2009.
And now the Italians will do their first climate camp in Venice. Laura, you have interviewed Marta from NoGrandiNavi in Venice.
Hello Marta, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Fine. So Marta, you are living in Venice and their cruise ships are a big problem. So why is this? What's so bad about these ships?
They are indeed. It's a nightmare because, it doesn't take a genius or a super expert to realize that they are they pollute in a quantity that is beyond. A cruise ship pollutes as much as 14,000 cars. A recent report signaled that Venice is one of the most polluted city with a harbor in Italy and in Europe. And beside that, cruise ships in general are a symbol of a type of tourism that is also destroying the city. We are talking about 20 million tourists coming every year before a population that is losing 1,000 inhabitants each and every year. So in the 70s, Venice was populated by 70,000 people. Today, we are less than 50,000. That is because, obviously, gentrification, Airbnbs, hotels that are built and replaced instead of actual houses and families and people living in the city. We are trying to resist. We are resisting, and we've been resisting for 7 years now, officially, but the battle is not over at all.
So cruise ships have a huge local impact, but also are really polluting for the whole world, changing the climate.
Yeah.
So you have a very specific kind of civil disobedience to protest against the ships. So what are you doing?
Yes. Well, you have to be really inventive if you live in a city that doesn't have streets. We have canals and we have water. So obviously the type of protest that we create and organize constructed and based on water and movement in the water. So every year we try to do something different and fun also because, we are obviously protesting, but it has to be a moment in which the city comes all together and we create a space and an alternative. So especially for what I told you about Venice, is a moment in which you have entertainment and families, young people, old people. It's really intergenerational. So you have all these people coming together. And every year we do something different. For example, last year we actually do like chases of the cruise ship with our little boat. A couple of years ago, we did an entire stage that was built on water, so it was floating in water. We did some blockage with the Angry Animals masks. A few days ago, we happened to have one of the biggest demonstrations in the history of the city, caused by an incident that took place a week ago in Venice, and you probably heard of that. A cruise ship lost control. The captain lost control because of a blackout, and so the cruise ship almost hit a smaller boat. And it was really, really serious because there were 5 injured people, but it could have ended up way worse than what happened. And so it was an alarm and a moment in which the city really was really hit by something that our movement, the movement against big ships, have been saying for 7 years now. But obviously, sometimes you need something that wakes you up, and that was the moment. So we had 10,000 people joining us on the streets of Venice, and we went all the way to San Mark Square, which is, for tourists and people, is one of the most known locations in the city. But for Venetians and people that live in Venice to protest and gather in the square has been impossible legally for 20 years now. And so it was really historical. It's an historical moment, and we are still elaborating on that.
Cool. Yeah, I saw some pictures. It's really amazing how you're blocking these really huge powerful ships with a small boat. Yeah, but Venice is not an exception. In Italy, there are a lot of places with strong local protests against big infrastructure projects, endangering nature and the climate. And you are now in the progress of joining forces with all of them. And you use the frame of climate justice. So why do you use the frame of climate justice, something so global, to unite all these local fights?
Right. Well, it's an interesting question because the thing is that the history of environmental movement and the environmental activism and climate justice activism is quite complicated in Italy. And by complicated, I mean also interesting and plural and spread out throughout the country from the north to the south. So what happens in Italy is that we've always had really strong environmental committees and movements and association of concerned citizens. But what is happening right now is, and I want to connect also to Ende Gelände, because the Ende Gelände movement was really inspiring for us to go beyond the NIMBY logic. So before this real elaboration that we've been having in the last couple of years, you had also these really strong committees that work locally against, as you said, big infrastructures, corruption, and projects that endangers nature, the health of people, and the environment, and are also based on a capitalist extractivist logic that is basically about a profit over life in general. So that, and by life I mean people and the ecosystem and everything that concerned us. So we always had these committees, but we were never able to make them connect and have a conversation with each. I mean, conversation. I mean, a political conversation that can create a platform that can go beyond the local. So you have a net of associations and movements that talk to each other and are able to elastically move from the reason that concern them in particular, but also to look at the bigger picture. So having an idea of, I mean, the fact that you can resist against a big infrastructure built in your city, in your region, but the logic behind that is something that involves the way in which you conceive and create economies, society, relations, and everything that is around that. So for us, in the last year we've seen, especially Ende Gelände was really powerful because we were able to articulate the climate justice motive that for us were as you said, a frame that could connect us, but also make us in conversation with what is happening in Europe and around the world in general. So to make it a national movement and a transnational movement, and that goes beyond the NIMBY logic, obviously. So it's not just a matter of, for us, for example, in Venice, it's not just a matter of getting the cruise ship out of Venice. It's about contesting the cruise ship system as a type of tourism that is extremely dangerous and potentially mortal, and I mean it kills people, it kills the planet, and we don't want it anymore.
You had already a first mass demonstration with all the other groups in Italy. How was it?
Yeah, it was. You referred to the march for climate justice and against big infrastructure that took place on the 23rd of March.
Exactly.
That was historical, and it was great because obviously we did it. It started in the northeast of Italy, and obviously we were in contact with the No TAP movement in Turin and in Piemonte region, but also with the Stop Biocidio movement in Naples and the No Tree, No TAP movement in the east coast of the country. And so being able to create a space and a moment in which every and each of us were protesting in Rome against a government that won based on also on movements that were against big infrastructure, and a government that a few months after started governing basically failed many people that believed that something would have changed. That didn't happen. I mean, we expected it, but the majority of the country really believed that this new government would stop the TAV, the construction, the big ships in Venice, and the Triv and the TAP in the Adriatic Sea. So so for us, it was a moment in which we were together to make us see how we are all fighting together at the same time as we are beyond representative politics that are constantly failing environmental movements. And also we demonstrated our intention to grow and develop from something that is really, say, we are just the beginning.
So the 150,000 people
And probably more.
That's really an amazing number.
Yeah, it is. It was a sea of people, truly a sea of people that joined forces in the capital. And so Rome was overwhelmed with the environmental movement in Italy, truly the environmental movement from the north to the south and everything in between.
You said, so it's not only about environmental or climate issues, but it's a more general protest also against the political system. So especially right now in Italy, the political situation is really bad. So you have the fascist Lega party that not only denies climate change, but is super racist, anti-feminist. So all bad things together. They're just the worst. So how do you deal with this hostile political environment?
Well, I mean, it's never easy, right? Because obviously the fight, the battle is harsher with a government that doesn't even believe what you are saying is true. And so it got harder. But also, as you said, the fact that they negate the climate change, and as much as they are racist, sexist, homophobic, all of these things are connected. And so when we speak about climate justice, it's not just a matter of environmental, as you said, it's not just an environmental movement. When you say climate justice, we also believe that we can't have climate justice without social justice. And to have social justice, you have to include people whose rights right now are mostly in danger. So we are obviously talking about migrants, immigrants, refugees, people that are seeking asylum and are hit by the climate change at the core. I mean, many of these people are not even recognized as climate refugees, when indeed the reason why they are leaving their countries and their homes is because they don't have the resources, but the way they put it is all economical, when the true reason is that we created a system that puts in danger the entire planet. And so obviously climate justice is about restructuring the entire system. We can't have climate justice with capitalism. We can't have climate justice if women are not included, if immigrants are not put in the conversation. And so obviously all of this is together. We are all together in this. And it's complicated, and it's not easy, it's not linear, it's something that we are still discussing, and it makes everything harder. Obviously, it would be easier to say, let's get the cruise ship out of Venice and out of the lagoon and we will be happy. That is not it's not a solution. That is not what we are seeking, what we want.
Our time is almost up, unfortunately. I could talk to you much longer. It's really inspiring what you're telling. So it's good that in the beginning of September there will be the perfect opportunity to learn more about your project and a lot more, because you will host the first Italian climate camp in Venice.
Yeah, we are indeed. And it's really, really, really exciting for us. As you said, it's the first one, so it's really experimental. And we are also scared as shit that something might go wrong. And we are planning to travel all around Europe to take inspiration from you guys. You've been doing this for much longer than us. So hopefully you will have some tips. We take this moment to invite. We don't want this climate camp to be just an Italian occasion to meet other fellow Italian activists. We want the whole Europe joining forces with us. It's gonna be really 4 days, but the schedule is intense. We plan to do direct action. So there's gonna be a demonstration right in the midst of the International Film Festival, Venice International Film Festival, that takes place at the exact time. So we are talking from the 4th to the 8th of September. at Lido di Venezia, and there's also going to be workshop, debates, and there's going to be 3 days in which each day there is a micro theme. First one is climate justice and climate change and migration. Second day, climate change, climate justice, and ecofeminism. So the way in the gender issues. And third day, I'm not sure about the exact which day
you still have time. So.
But hopefully people are gonna come to us with us for a week or so. And third day, I would say climate change and big infrastructure. So we're gonna discuss how capitalism and our system of production and consumption has actually created the crisis we are facing right now. That is the biggest challenge of our time.
Okay, yeah, that sounds amazing. I certainly will come. I hope a lot
there's also sun, there's also the beach. So the setting is beautiful. We hope that people would take it as a political holiday, let's say. So fun, but also discussion. We want to discuss with European movements.
Yeah, I can't imagine a better place to discuss than a beach in Venice, certainly.
Right.
Thank you very much for the interview. See you soon.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, guys.
Now we are at the end of the podcast. If you caught the fire for the European climate justice movement, there are a lot of opportunities this summer to be part. The next climate camp in action will be the Czech climate camp from 1st to 7th of July.
But there are also camps and action in Switzerland, Poland, Portugal, Belgium, France, and many more. You can find all the dates on the Ende Gelände website, ende-gelände.org.
We say goodbye and hope to see you in one of the climate camps and climate struggles.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Stop capitalism.
Sie befinden sich im Gefahrenbereich der Abraumkante.